Welcome, everyone, to Cannabis News with Joe Klare. It's March 28th, 2018. It's presented by the Marijuana Times over at marijuanatimes.org. Go check us out over there. Lots of great articles. And every episode of this show, all at marijuanatimes.org. You can also find this show by searching the Marijuana Times on Apple Podcasts. The show on the go, the audio-only version of the podcast. Go check it out on Apple Podcasts. Today, we're talking more about the extension of medical marijuana protections in the omnibus bill signed by President Trump last week. Also, slow progress, but it is progress on federal legalization in Canada. And an interesting story from Rolling Stone about how new marijuana laws in California are putting businesses at risk of robbery or worse. Talk about all that coming up, but first, of course, I'll tell you, the Cannabis News with Joe Klare is brought to you by Naturesidecannabis.com. Naturesidecannabis.com is a proud sponsor of the show. Check out their organic, all-natural pesticides. Natureside is a side is spelled C-I-D-E. Grow safe and poison-free. Don't put harmful chemicals on your grow if you're a cannabis cultivator. Also, you want to be regulatory compliant. Don't want to use harmful pesticides. You want to use approved pesticides. Natureside is approved for pesticide use on cannabis grows in Colorado, Oregon, and Washington. At NatureSideCannabis.com, a proud sponsor of Cannabis News with Joe Klare. Hey, that's me. This first story is by Julia Granowitz over at marijuanatimes.org. President Trump and Congress extend protections for the medical marijuana industry. Medical marijuana will be protected from prosecution under federal law at least through September 30th, 2018, as President Trump signed an extension of the Consolidated Appropriations Act of 2018 last week, otherwise known as what he signed was the Omnibus Bill, is what it was called in the media. Since 2014, a federal spending bill that determines the budget has been the only piece of federal legislation protecting states' rights to legalize and use marijuana for medical or medicinal purposes. The Rohrabacher-Farr Amendment is part of the Consolidated Appropriations Act, and it bans the Department of Justice from using their funding on state legal medical marijuana cultivators, retailers, and consumers. It does not protect the adult use industry. An attempt was made to have the same kind of rider cover the adult use marijuana industry, preventing the Department of Justice from using funds to go after those businesses, but that effort ultimately failed. Also, another interesting note, last year when this passed, or whatever the last extension was that averted a shutdown, sometime last year, President Trump had a little signing statement on the front of it, and in it he made reference to the fact that he wasn't really keen on the medical marijuana protections. This year, there was no such signing statement, no such little snarky little aside or note or addendum from President Trump, which means he either forgot or he cares less about it, or he thinks it wasn't a good idea. It didn't help anything. It was useless. Maybe he was golfing that day. That's a good possibility. But so it's an extension. It's kicking the can down the road would be the best analogy for this. I've said this many times. I will continue to say this many times. Federal law needs to be changed. Until then, legalization is possibly a temporary thing. I mean, you can get little riders for federal spending bills. They have to be redone every year, or every time there's going to be a shutdown, or when the budget runs out, or whatever. You can have little, tricks and loopholes and all of that. But until federal law is changed and marijuana prohibition is repealed on a federal level, there's going to be problems. And whatever states do, they're never going to be completely safe from interference from the feds until the law is changed and cannabis is removed from the Controlled Substances Act completely. Also, a group of 59 bipartisan lawmakers sent a letter to so the House Appropriations Committee will revisit the funding bill this fall Hopefully have it ready for fiscal year 2019. When they do revisit it, there are at least 59 bipartisan lawmakers who want to see recreational cannabis covered next time. Those 59 lawmakers wrote a letter to top decision makers on the House Appropriations Committee last week. Let's say, quote, in part, we are concerned about the Department of Justice enforcing federal marijuana law in a way that blocks implementation of marijuana reform laws in those states that have passed such reforms. In other words, people in Congress are there's a lot of them. They're very gung-ho about changing marijuana law, period, or at least keeping things moving in that direction. And that's the basis. That's the base of what hopefully will become full marijuana prohibition repeal in the near future. I mean, that's wishful thinking, but you never know. I mean, we could be sitting here 3 years from now with a different Congress and a different president, and it could be a different ballgame. It remains to be seen. This next story is from thestar.com. Liberals plan to legalize marijuana by midsummer passes its first hurdle in the Senate. The Liberal plan to legalize marijuana by midsummer was rescued last week when senators, including independents who were appointed but not controlled by Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, voted for the Trudeau government's proposed bill. In a 44-29 vote, the Senate nudged forward Bill C-45, one of the two key bills that would enact a new legal framework for cannabis production and distribution. It was a second reading, or a vote on the bill in principle, and a late-hour victory that had appeared far from certain for a key Liberal promise, coming after a memo went out late Wednesday to traveling independent senators to return for the crucial vote. Trudeau had warned senators that his government was elected with a mandate to make the controversial change to Canada's drug laws. He said, quote, we expect a more independent Senate will do its work to look at legislation sent by the House of Commons, that they evaluate the positive impacts on the community, that they bring ameliorations if needed. But it is very clear that this bill responds first to an electoral promise that we made very clearly during the election campaign and for which Canadians voted. Liberals proposed legislation. For now, first, the bill moves on for a more detailed study in Senate committees. In fact, 5 committees will study different aspects of the legal pot scheme. Wow. We talked before about the slowness with which the Canadian political process, lawmaking process, works. 5 committees studying the legalization bill. That's pretty impressive. A final vote on the legislation is expected in June. The Liberals proposed legislation, and its rush to get it passed into law before the end of the parliamentary sitting in June had run into strong objections in the upper chamber from conservatives and some independents who feared the government was moving too fast. Too fast. Slow it down. It's only taken a year or more after a year of just the build-up, and then it's been another year of talking about it and getting it through the House and partway through the Senate. But everybody hold up. Everybody calm down. This may be moving too fast. The Canadian senators, they wanted to slow that stuff down. The vote capped several days of nail-biting in the Senate hallways for the bill's backers who figured they had just a 6-vote margin to get the bill passed. There are 33 conservative senators. There's also 43 independent senators, 11 liberals, and 6 who have no affiliation. So obviously the independents are what put it over the top, because the liberals, with only having 11 senators, it's not enough to do anything. So they need independents to get stuff done. This next story is from RollingStone.com. Stolen weed, stolen cash, new marijuana laws put pot producers at risk. You can go check this. It's a very long story over at RollingStone.com if you want to check it out. It, like all of the stories we talk about here on Cannabis News, is linked in the description of this video. It's a story about, it begins with talking about Kenny Morrison, who owns a marijuana-infused products company. They put out popular edibles like the 420 bar and cannabis quenchers in both California and Washington State. Well, his business was robbed. Hundreds of thousands of dollars were taken. They smashed delivery truck windshields, computers, and a safe. And here's the interesting thing. Now, let's hone in on what I'm about to say. 12 weeks after California began legal sales of adult use marijuana, Newly licensed operators like Morrison are finding themselves more vulnerable to crime than ever before. Because cannabis remains illegal under federal law, banks generally won't accept the money made by pot businesses, forcing entrepreneurs like Morrison to keep huge amounts of cash on hand. Now, this is a story we've talked about many, many times, how banks won't touch money from pot businesses because of federal law, because they're scared of losing their federal backing, which banks need. They need that insurance to back up their deposits and whatever, and just to stay in business. So they're scared. They're not going to touch marijuana business money. But that's not new. That's something we've worried about, and people in the cannabis industry and the community have worried about for quite a while. Here's the new kicker. They said for a long time, Morrison dealt with this problem quietly. But now that he is licensed to distribute marijuana by the state of California, he is subject to standard public records disclosure laws. So all of his information is easily searchable on a government database, including the exact location of his business. So, on one hand, you have federal law screwing him because he can't put his money in a bank. Then you have state law on the other side screwing him by putting all his information out there and basically putting out a bat signal to someone who wants to rob the place to, hey, these places have a lot of cash. Well, now, but wait, like Billy Mays, but wait, there's more. Now, we'll give you the exact location of these businesses. Now, my first question, which has really nothing to do with the problem with this, is where's this guy's security system? I mean, that's the first thing I thought when I read this and what happened, and he didn't know about it until he came back from vacation. And where's the security system? If I have hundreds of thousands of dollars sitting somewhere, you best believe I'm going to shell out 10 or 15 grand to get a good security system. But that doesn't alleviate the problem of the federal and the state government combining to make this guy a sitting target. They say, quote, we carry more cash than banks. You can't walk into a bank and get $300,000 cash if you want it. You'd make more money robbing one of us. It just felt like, wow, now that my business is completely legal, it's never been more dangerous. Which is absolutely true. And until this problem is fixed, I mean, I can't stress enough. Security. Alarms, bells, cameras, tripwires, those lasers that you see in movies. You got to spray because they're invisible, and that's the only way you can see them. And then you got to crawl through them. Let's say you have $300,000 in a safe in a business. How much is it worth to you to get the top of the art security, state of the art security system, the best money can buy? Like I said, I would have no problem dropping 10, 15, 20 grand on a security system. That doesn't mitigate the problem that the government is causing. That's a problem that needs to be fixed immediately. Because even the best security system in the world won't stop someone from busting your door while you're open and blowing you and your employees away, or gunning you down and then robbing you that way. So it's problems that need to be fixed all around. But until this problem is fixed, any California businesses that are listening to this, if you're in this category where you have all this cash and your information is being put out there by the government, security is completely, unbelievably necessary. The story goes on. Like I said, it's a very long story. You can go check it out. The link is in the description. Every state that has legalized weed has struggled with whether to make information about cannabis businesses public. In some places, the weed industry has successfully lobbied to keep their addresses and names private. In others, all of the details are accessible on a government website. Business owners have adjusted accordingly. And one person says, later in the story, if you just, maybe instead of like the actual physical address, maybe a mailing address the government could put out there or something like that. I don't know why these things need to be public anyway. I mean, if a company wants their address public, well, then it'll be on Google, and people will be able to search it and go find them. Like, if I want to go to Kroger and I don't know where there's a Kroger around here or a Walmart, I can go on Google and I can find out. But, Kroger's not sitting there on hundreds of thousands of dollars trying to keep their money and trying to keep their location a secret. No. Long way to go. Long way to go on all of this legalization stuff, whether it's federal, local, state, wherever. We're just in the beginning of this, and a lot of advancements have been made, a lot of progress has been made, but there's a long, long way to go. So we just keep fighting. That's what we do here every day here at Cannabis News with Joe Klare. Please like, share, comment, on the videos. Share them from marijuanatimes.org, from YouTube, Facebook, wherever. Tell everyone you can, even if there's people in your real life. Just tell them. Search Cannabis News with Joe Klare. Search on Google. They'll find me. I'm right here doing this show 5 days a week with your support and your help. Thanks, everybody, for checking us out. We'll see you tomorrow here on Cannabis News. Have a good one. I don't know. I'm trying to get. I need a good outro tagline. Have a good one. I say have a good one and point in the air. No, that's horrible. That's horrible. I'll be back with something better tomorrow. Thanks, everybody.